as you know, I am chatting with Michael Bartura about health and wellness. Michael has decades of management experience across sectors in 4 continents. He has extensive experience in mindfulness practices and delivers insightful and engaging training seminars and group work through non-denominational science-based methodologies. In earlier years, Michael worked as a therapist and a trainer in clinics and centres in Australia, the UK, the US, and Canada. Later, he undertook senior managerial roles in international businesses and charities. He now runs his own coaching practice based on mindfulness-based leadership and positive neuroplasticity to work with individuals, organisations, and startups, which is exactly why I've asked him to be here today. So thank you so much for joining us. Michael, I'm really excited to get into the nitty-gritty of how we can begin to know and accept ourselves, especially during a crisis. So without further ado, I feel like we can get started. I've got a couple more people to admit, so I'll do that. Now, I have a few questions here for you. First of all, let me just get them out, excuse me. Do you think we can ever know ourselves fully?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here. And I must mention, Ian Pim and I worked years ago in Cambodia together. So it's just really nice to sort of have you on the call. And hi, Angela. So it's an interesting question because it's kind of the wrong way around, right? Like self-knowledge, self-awareness is actually our inner state. But somehow we've been walking around, or we grow to walk around almost like living in ignorance. And one way to kind of think about it is that if, you've just told, in a nutshell, my life story, and, for me, it sounds wonderful. Anyway, I had a good life. I can't complain. But what happened, for example, if somehow overnight I lose completely my memory and then someone plucked me and put me in Chile, for that matter, right? And I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I will have no recollection or no understanding or no insight into who is Michael, and yet I'm going to be there, right? I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be able to sort of hopefully communicate or being able to sort of live a new life just without any knowledge of my current life. And what it points out to is the fact that, in a sense, if you contemplate what is your life, you realize that your life is a story that we tell ourselves in our head about what we've done and where we are and, what kind of person we are and all that sort of knowledge and experience about who we are. But the real question is that who we are, or is this just happens to be the story that I grew up with? And if I grew up somewhere else, it will be a different story. And so in that sense, what we're looking for when we talk about self-awareness is what is the baseline? What is our state of self-knowledge or self-awareness that is not dependent, or not connected directly to our particular story, because our story can change. And if anything, one of the things that this crisis have done is it came and it ripped open this illusion that we have control over our story, and we can, we lived under the illusion that, if we have a certain volition in the way that we live our life, that volition is going to continue. So, work is going to be there tomorrow, and same people are going to be there tomorrow, that sort of stuff. And every time that we have a crisis in life, a major crisis like losing a loved one, or indeed some sort of a natural disaster that comes and just completely dismantles the story of our life, we kind of feel blown apart because we don't have a story to hold on. And so the answer, in a sense, is yes, it is possible to know who we are, but we have to dig into that which is beyond our story. And I want to give an analogy or metaphor that might help a little bit in that sort of sense. If you imagine the ocean and the waves that are going through the ocean, when we look at those waves, we look at them as sort of like their own independent, not necessarily independent, but we look at them as something that there is a thing there. There's a wave, and we can catch wave and we can surf, and how wonderful it is. And we tend to sort of overlook the fact that whatever it is, this is the ocean, right? In other words, we are kind of separate waves of an ocean that is interconnected and has a certain sense of consciousness that shows up through us, and that awareness tends to be interpreted through the individual self as a separate wave, but we always also part of the ocean. And it's that self-awareness, that reflection where we start to feel being part of the whole, our interconnectedness with the whole, which is really worthwhile is self-aware, in the exploration of self-awareness.
Beautiful. Well, beautifully said. My next question is, there's always talk of what happens in our childhood and how it shapes us for life. I mean, this is a pretty heavy question, but can this be undone, especially if those experiences were particularly damaging?
So you can look again at the process by which we grow up into a particular identity, right? Like we grow up in a certain country, we might move a country. I myself emigrated from the Middle East to Australia, so I've got this kind of dual identity. I can be an Israeli, I can be an Australian, and so on. But that identity is continuously formed and being informed and affected by the story or the experiences that we had. And indeed, if our childhood, particular experiences, or sometimes a long period of difficulties that we go through our childhood has been there, it's been quite a prominent feature of our childhood, it tends to damage us in a way. We kind of contract. We start to think of ourselves as the people or the personality that is limited by that experience. So we get very suspicious, or we get very kind of, we lose trust in the world. Like children or babies, when they're born, they don't need psychology, right? But then things happen along life, and we start to collect this emotional and mental baggage that we tend to identify ourselves with. And so therapy is really useful in that sort of sense, because you can go back to particular occasions that have been really formative in the way that we see ourselves, and you can get to the bottom of them and understand what was the hurt, what was the pain that we tried to ignore or we tried to avoid, and the kind of decisions that we made about our life that don't serve us anymore. That said, Alain de Botton, the philosopher who started the School of Life, suggests, for example, that it's kind of useful, but to a limited degree, because you can go on digging forever, right? In other words, we've came here with a sort of an innocence and even an intelligence, a natural intelligence that allows us to live in the present moment and allows us to just respond to what arises. And then we kind of got, sort of hemmed in by all our experiences, and we can keep digging and digging and digging and finding what's the reason for this feeling or what's the reason for that feeling. Or we can just understand that instead, and this is the difference maybe between coaching and therapy, we can learn to work with the way that we think right now and learn to tweak, or maybe even not take our thoughts so seriously, and so they don't limit us so much. So I would say therapy is useful, especially when people have very heavy stuff through the childhood, to kind of get in touch with some stuff. But I would also suggest that, there's a point where we might as well just say, okay, I kind of understand my history and I know how to work with it, but I also want to look forward and learn how to work with my thinking, learn to understand my mind in a way that allows me to be different into the future, change my behavior into the future.
Yeah, no, I love that. I also, sorry, it's on a timer. I love that. It's this idea that, something that I hear a lot, especially around dating or especially around career, is that I'm not ready yet. I still have to do this searching, this growing, this learning, but it's almost this acceptance of it's okay to go down these two roads together. It's okay to still be grieving a relationship whilst going into another. And I love that idea of, searching is absolutely necessary, but so is growing, and they can happen in symbiosis.
Yes.
I think I have a question here as well, and I'll ask it because it's related. It says, how has trauma, especially in childhood, affected us throughout our lives? I mean, I know you've kind of already answered that, but is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure. So think about it in a sense as the child's identity is kind of in trust and in relationship with whatever happens to them at that particular moment. It's it's innocent, it's vulnerable, it's open, it's interested, it's curious. Like anyone who's been around children, they live in the most excited sort of way with whatever happens at that particular moment. And if you let them do that, if you support that sort of way of growing, then they kind of grow strong within that, because they sort of test themselves and they try and stretch their horizon. They want to do stuff, and that's wonderful. Now we come, or life situations sometimes come, and they actually very abruptly put a limitation, or they cut that exuberance. They say, no, you can't do that, right? Or even get into an abusive sort of behavior in terms of trying to control those children. And at that point, what happened is that the child suddenly, instead of being at one and in that sort of dance with whatever is their experience, suddenly get hemmed in by that experience and feel like that experience, it switches on the survival mechanism of like, okay, I'm being attacked, right? Mm-hmm. And so whatever that experience has become an attack on my personality. And usually what happened is that that particular child said, okay, that's a danger zone and I shouldn't go there. Like, I shouldn't be exuberant in this situation. I shouldn't, I shouldn't act in that particular way because it was painful to act that way. And that becomes a traumatic experience which informed them into how do you behave in certain ways, right? However, quite often what happened, and where the limitation for us as adults is that that original kind of condition is long gone, but we've already shrunk ourselves into that sort of size that doesn't want to venture into where it was painful. And then even if we have the opportunity and there's no reason for us not to do it, we'll just stay where it was comfort. In other words, we shrunk ourselves into our comfort zone and we tend not to go outside it. And that's, of course, a sort of it's a fairly light way to describe trauma, because trauma can be really damaging when it gets into the heavy side of it, and people get into psychosis and they get into mental issues because of that. But by and large, it's the same mechanism. The more damage was inflicted on the child, the less they're interested or dare to sort of step outside that shrunk comfort zone, because it was painful then, and in their mind, it's painful that you never want to go there anymore. I don't know if that answers whoever asked that, but that's one way to look at it.
That was beautiful. And I'll just say it again, because when you said it to me, I had a full body kind of reaction, which was this trauma, it's contracting. And when we feel comfortable, that fear, that anger, it's contracting. And when we feel comfortable and safe, we expand. And I think it's really interesting to note when that happens, when you can almost be physical, I think. I have another question from beautiful Anna here. She said about validation. How can I overcome the need? I am such a critical thinker.
Right. Yeah. So the first thing I should say is that there is no kind of like one solution fits all. It's really about the way that we work with our inner conversation. So if we go back to self-awareness, what you notice is that we have a voice in our head, right? And that voice is almost like a radio station that we don't have control over it, right? It's just you wake up in the morning and someone switch on the radio in your head and it goes on. And what's bizarre about that radio is that it doesn't seem to have one presenter. It seems to have a whole set of presenters, and some of them don't even like each other. So you get into this kind of ongoing conversation in your head when parts of you sort of berate yourself or diminish yourself or tell yourself that you're stupid or you're not good enough. And other parts kind of every now and then come up and say, no, you can do it. And there's all these sort of voices, right? So that internalization sort of processes happen as part of the growing up as children. Most of those voices were external voices that at the particular time they sounded alluring or they sounded attracting for us to sort of practice with or internalize, right? Mm-hmm. When you get into this issue of validation, quite often what happens is that there is a sense of like, okay, I'm not really sure about what's going on in here, and I got used to check against other people in my surrounding as to, is this the right thing or the wrong thing? Because when it was the wrong thing, there was some behavior that was unpleasant, whether it was, being told off, or whether it was being laughed at or whatnot. So we kind of learned to, okay, I've got to be safe. Safe thing is to check in with other people. And if they say that it's okay, then I'm not going to get hurt, right? That's, again, generalization, but the process is pretty kind of repetitive in that sort of way. So what we want to do, and this is not just applicable for that particular predicament, is we want to start to understand that we relate to life through our thinking. In other words, we don't have a relationship with what's going on as an external thing. We have a relationship with what's going on as the way that we perceive it and the conversation that we have about that in our head. And there's a beautiful freedom in understanding that, because if that's what's going on, then the conversation in our head is something that we can work on. Mm. And so we start to look for the places or the handles or the triggers where every time I used to go for validation on an automatic pilot, because that's what I'm used to do, I want to try and notice that. I want to try and sort of like look for the places where I catch myself going for validation. And it's a sort of a learning process. It's a little bit like, there's a particular mechanism in the brain called the reticular access system, which sort of puts up on your desktop or on your screen, in a sense, something that was relevant to the conversation. You just looked at it, you just thought about it, and then it's prominent. It's sort of, it flies high in your center of attention. And the best example is, someone told you about a new car or a new toy or a new whatever that they bought, and you've never sort of noticed it before, and then you go home and in the next week you notice it 3 times on the street, right? Or you learn a new word. This happens to me a lot as a non-English speaker. I learn a new word. I've never heard this word before, and then it appears in the newspapers 3 times in the week after that, right? So what's going on there is that your brain is now geared to look for those things because they were prominent in the way that you were thinking. In the same way, we can start to curate our inner dialogue, our inner voice, for the kind of thinking that limits us, for that, request for validation, and see if we can catch ourselves, maybe not before, maybe we do it after, but that was an example where I do that. And you sort of want to close the gap slowly on noticing it until one day you kind of notice you're about to do that. Mm-hmm. And understand that you can change that, like if you catch yourself thinking, I'm going to ask for validation, it's like, well, maybe I don't have to. So in other words, you start to rewire your brain to behave in a different way through that developing of self-awareness and the practice of looking for alternative ways of engaging.
Yeah, beautiful. Adam has just asked, is there a hack to focus on being our best potential self versus comparing ourselves to others? And I thought that was a perfect kind of explanation of that, actually. So, but please, Adam, let me know if you would like him to elaborate. But I'm going to move on. I would love to know, can we ever really know how others see us?
Yeah, that's a big question. So, if we don't know ourselves, right, and really most of the time we're on automatic pilot, we're not aware of ourselves behaving in a particular way. We just kind of run through the motions and through learned behaviors, which often don't serve us very well. If you extrapolate from that into, our relationship with others, you realize that, there's no way we can really know others either. Like, we can only know the way that we think about them, which is a perceived kind of experience that builds over time, and even worse, what happens is that we have a certain experience, then we make a decision about that experience. That person is rude, or that person is unpleasant, or that person is lovely and they're so beautiful to me, or whatever. And then of course it's a sort of a self-affirming experience. Because of the way that the mind works, we tend to see the stuff that we kind of believe in already. Which means that we have this cognitive bias, but we would continuously sort of affirm to ourselves what we think we know already. Mm-hmm. And that explains why, for example, you have a situation where 2 people might go through exactly the same experience, and each one of them will talk about it as if it was a very different, very different happening. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if we don't know ourselves and they don't know themselves, and we project what we think about them, what chances do we have to actually really perceive who they are, right?
0.
Not much. The remedy for that is, and one way to look about it is to think about what, again, Alain de Botton, the philosopher, he calls it the universal identity, or he uses that term. It's actually previous to his work, where we're all humans. In other words, whatever I perceive in you as your personality or your story might not be true and is interpreted through my story, but I do know that you suffer pain when someone laughs at you. I do know that you want to feel happy. I do know that you probably, I tend to joke quite often when I talk about, I do know that you probably have problems with your mother-in-law, right? So that sort of commonality allows us to connect with another person and to see another person, because the simple thing for us is to sort of say, okay, well, what would I feel in that situation, right? Not through my story, just as a human being. And it's interesting enough, if you look at what's called the golden rule, which is this kind of way of behavior that appears through all the religions and tradition, most of them talk about, just don't do unto others what you don't like being done unto you. You kind of know what's fair and what's not, what's pleasant and what's not, what's right and what's not. So just behave to others the way that you would like them to behave to you, and you're kind of okay. And in that way, I think we can see others. It's just that we tend to see them through the framework of our personality, looking at their personality, and that's just a mindset. That's just a whole setup of thoughts in our head. That's all the validity that it has.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess one of the massive lenses that we are using, though, to compare ourselves is social media. So what do you think the effect of social media has on our sense of self? Does it make it harder or easier to find self-knowledge?
Yeah, such a good question. I was sitting on a bus. I was doing a training in Sydney last year, and I was staying with my cousin and going on the bus every day to the training. And every morning there was a girl, I think she was maybe 20 years old, and she spent the entire trip, sort of pouting at the camera, taking selfies, looking at them, and sort of obviously not liking them, or I don't know, but she just kept doing it. And she did it every morning, and I just remember feeling sad, like, what is it that we've done with with the way that us as a society expose you to life, where you think it is so important to look in a certain way and to get the perfect angle, and you got to. And so I think it exacerbates narcissism. It exacerbates, sort of this idea that we got to look good. In other words, it caters to a very superficial aspect of ourselves, the ego that just want to dominate and avoid domination, but it does it in a very diminishing way to our sense of secure self. And again, nothing, it's not that girl's fault. It's what we build out of society. And so I think it's a double-edged sword in that sort of sense. Like, on the one hand, if you want to develop self-awareness, the internet allows you to explore the best teachers in the world. And you can listen in to these incredible talks, and there's all this beautiful, amazing information that you can explore through the internet, right? Or you can fall into this thing where you just superficially look at, creating the next best photo or showing off the next best meal. And in that sense, it doesn't serve us very well. In fact, I think there was a research in Denmark where they got people off Facebook for a few weeks and they checked them for the level of happiness. And lo and behold, the happiness was better. They were happier by not engaging with this sort of continuous showing off, like, have I got the best holiday, have I got the best, whatever it is. So it's really how we use things again. Technology often ends up in that corner where, like, it can be wonderful if we use it wonderfully, and it can be really detrimental to our well-being if we don't. And it's a matter of us educating the next generation to do it properly, sort of thing, or to do it in a way that builds self-esteem rather than diminishes it.
Yeah, beautiful. And now you basically have kind of answered this. You've cited a study that has said that our happiness expands when we get off these social media platforms. But what are some of the benefits of actually pursuing the removal of these comfortable but stagnating views of ourselves, whether that's by social media, old trauma coming to the front and becoming conscious of it, etc.
Yeah. In some way, you can look at it, if you want to sort of look on the underlying architecture of what's going on, is that desire in general leads to suffering, right? Desire usually separates us from a true essence, because we want happiness by projecting it on something outside us, where the reality of it is the only way for us to really get into contentment and happiness is by learning to love what's going on right now inside ourselves, and learning how to sort of work with that material. And so what I think social media does often is it's exacerbate this tendency to desire stuff because everyone else is sort of showing up their best, gold watches and whatnot. And you kind of think, oh, I want that. They look happy. I want to be happy. I must have that to do that. And media has done it for a long time, but social media is just so in your face, so prevalent, and so right now in the present moment in our face that it's very hard to avoid.
Yeah, that got me right in the heart. The idea of like, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy if,
Yes.
I'll be happy. Yeah. That was beautiful. Okay, so we're going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to break us off into a couple of smaller groups, and we're going to chat about 3 questions in particular, which I will add to the group chat. So I've just got it there. Will I? This is a great question. Bear with me, excuse me, some slight technical difficulties. Perfect. So I've just included them there so everyone has them, but both Michael and I will basically moderate the discussion, but it's really just a chance for everyone to kind of get something really active out of this webinar. If you don't know how, just let me know, but you can take yourselves off mute, and if you'd like to, please turn on your videos as well. But yeah, for now, I will put us out into our breakout room. So bear with me for one moment.
See you on the other side.
See you on the other side. All right.
It's a painful thing to do, isn't it, Cate?
It is.
Fiddly.
Hopefully I've done it. How do I get out of here now? Okay. All right. Okay. Hopefully we've done it.
Here it is. Well done, Cate.
Do we do it? Okay.
Has just died. Ah.
Hi,
There
everybody.
we go. All good. Hello.
All right. So, as I said, we've got a few questions. I'll just see if it's come up in the chat. It is. All the questions are there. So the first question was basically, how has COVID-19 affected you? And what is your biggest challenge right now? I figured we can just do a bit of a round robin. I'm happy to begin. How's it affected me?
I can stop you right there. So
Yep.
I've looked into the chat. Did you send it to everyone in your chat box, or?
Oh, that's a great. No, I didn't. I will right now. Done to everybody.
All right.
So, as I was saying, the first question is, let's chat about COVID-19. So how has it affected you, and what's your biggest challenge right now? You know what? I kind of don't mind it. I don't mind the fact that I get an extra day at home. I mean, I wish it was on a deeper level. Obviously, my heart absolutely breaks to anyone who, is having to deal with any health issues. But my biggest challenge right now is not being around large groups of people. As an extrovert, I feel like I get a lot of energy from that. And I'm realizing that it's making me personally a lot less active. I'm doing a lot less walking. I'm sitting constantly. So I think just from a really basic body level, I miss exerting myself.
It's interesting, and it does impact all of us different ways. And I guess, it's probably, and Angela is actually our planted guru. So this little group, we've actually done quite well. Oh, Anna, you're going to love Angela, because Cate and I already know her. But anyway, so it'll be less from Cate and I and more from Angela, believe me. It is probably a little bit of that grieving process that you go through in terms of, it's the, oh my God, what are we doing now? And now the way that I kind of felt like when you're dealing with an unknown, I don't disagree with the steps that have been taken. And, and you're at home and all of that. And my husband's working from home. My eldest is his first term at university. And then my daughter is year 9. She was doing some homeschooling. And then I'm doing a bit of work and a bit at home. And so anyway, so it's kind of a bit frustrating, but it was actually quite good as well. And now it's to the point that I'm like, all right, so we're actually getting back to being busy again, because I've been on my walks. Everybody in Malvern is walking around everywhere. And it's kind of, there's no social distancing around in my neck of the woods, but I'm like, and this is my own opinion, not endorsed, cover my branding and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of go, we lose anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 people to the flu every year. And that virus changes. We might, I just kind of go, we're going to have to learn how to cohabitate with this. We're going to have to adopt some of the new normal as the way we do things around here from forevermore. But we also need that balance of looking at, quite frankly, how can we get back some of the stuff that we have lost? Because I do like big groups of people. I do want to have a big group of people around, and I can't get 4x4 in my living room. So it's kind of like, what does that mean? And I guess that's kind of a journey that we're all going to be on, but that's kind of where I kind of go, like, I kind of don't mind it. I think I'm dealing with it okay. But then, that frustration, that little devil on my shoulder goes, I want to give that person a hug. Because I do miss the physical contact of my friends and being with my friends. So anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
What about,
is that telling?
what about you, Anna? How are you doing?
Oh,
We can't hear you.
and I can't see any muting on our end.
No. Do you have are your headphones plugged in accidentally? I do that all the time. What about you, Angela?
I'll let Amy get her hearing and voice organized. And yeah, look, I think in many ways, not everything and nothing has changed. Yes, the world has changed, but I've worked from home for years. Nothing changed there. A lot of my friends and family are in North America or overseas somewhere. So connecting with people online has been my MO for years. What has changed is, my business really fell over and I've had to reshape it. So devastating at first, but I'm now excited about what's to come. So I heard someone today talking about not just the new normal, but the normal now, normal as it is now. And for me, the only normal I think I've ever known is really just a setting on my washing machine. It's like, I don't know what is normal. And what else? I heard someone else say that COVID, rather than calling it COVID-19, we should call it COVID correction, because it's, in many ways, it's been as though the whole world, from pimp to priest, has been sent to their room for naughty behavior. And we're all having a timeout. And having, for those of us, for those of us who are privileged enough to...
No, sorry, we're recording, never mind.
Oh, pardon me. I keep forgetting. For those of us who've been privileged to have had good health through this, and family and friends who, our communities have managed quite well, I feel very privileged. So, if I can put all that stuff over to the side, let there be light.
And then there was.
And then there was. So in many ways, I feel okay. There's certainly people doing it much harder. It's a moment in time, and it's how we manage it. And I like when Michael was talking about the inner critic, because it is that internal dialogue that's going to kind of shape how we approach this and how we relate to it, because we can't change what's happening, but what we can manage is how we ourselves move through it. And it is that dialogue, being aware of where are our thoughts taking us, and what are those validation peaks that stand up, that we can change that dialogue, that narrative. Yeah. Did we lose Amy?
She just said that she had to close and rejoin, and hopefully she'll figure out.
Okay,
so I'm hoping she'll come. Oh, here she is. Assigned to. All right. Okay, perfect. She should be back in.
It's Anna. It's Anna.
Anna, pardon me. Anna.
Anna Chan.
Anna, so she's just waiting.
Okay.
What's one positive transformation you've noticed in yourself in the last month? So I guess for me, I'm just creating really tight-knit friendships with a few people, and those relationships have really deepened, and that's been incredibly important. Yeah,
and I think that's natural, because when you can't go out and be the life of the party, then it's about all right, so let's have some genuine connections. And I think that even with people that you're just meeting for the first time, I think we've talked about this before, that they're actually prepared to go deeper sooner, because we have such a shared experience at the moment, and we're all this has all impacted us, all of us, in one way or another. So, and I think that I think people are a bit more tolerant, and I hope that lasts. And if I think about myself, I think it's more than anything, it's probably given me the opportunity to pull back and kind of go, you know what, I'm actually going to go for that walk. I'm going to go and do some stuff, which typically our weekends are chaos, and working full time and all of that. The last thing you actually, invest in is yourself. And that's really the first person you should invest in. So.
Very true. So it'd be interesting to see what we all continue with.
Yeah.
What we take forward.
So I'm hoping to last for 13 months, so that way I would have built that. Or maybe it's 13 days, 13, I don't know, it's 13 something.
Whatever it takes.
Still the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the world being quieter.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, true. But I do miss sport. I do miss watching footy. Korean baseball is on, but I can't seem to find it on Foxtel. So, we're watching reruns of Your Team Wins. So, but yeah.
It takes the surprise out of it, doesn't it?
Sorry, guys. I'm just going to have to leave the room to see if I can readmit Anna and Stacey. Will you give me one moment? But if you'd like to, I do have the next question, which is, what is one goal in your life that COVID-19 is helping you achieve? So maybe paying attention to your focus, or,
All right, bye-bye, whatever.
Bye-bye.
Sort of try to stick with them if I can, because we have is sort of now what's around us. Like, instead of being in the future all the time, I need to be really, really present and trying to feel the sensations and experiences that happen in the present to help me determine more what my values are. Is that a goal?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a goal. It's a massive goal.
And it's probably one of the tougher ones. And so I applaud you for doing it, because we all get, we all kind of have that, oh, what's that sparkly thing that person has? Or what's that? And so, and Michael touched on it, it's that desire. When in reality, things don't make you happy.
Yeah. Or I'll be happy when. I'm this much thinner or this much richer or have this or that or the other. Yeah, no, absolutely.
When I achieve whatever. Yeah.
Definitely. And I kind of, just to piggyback, I think, on your point, Angela, I only caught the end of it, so I'm sorry if it has nothing to do with what you just said. But just going back to community, I honestly feel more connected in isolation than that I have in a really, really long time. And I think it is that quality over quantity argument. You know, having to just go on walks with that one person and being forced to not have alcohol, not have, you know, anything shiny, not having an activity, not having 1,000 other people around you, and just having this one moment with this person. I mean, I'm sure I'll lose a lot of friendships because of it as well. But yeah.
But I think in terms, and I kind of equate this a little bit to, you know, it's so much quality over quantity. And that was one of the best things I did, was sail across the South Pacific, because when I was at university, I had all kinds of friends. I probably had 24 friends that I was always kind of mucking around with. But when I set sail and you actually had to use a pen and write, no emails, nothing like that, because this was before the internet. Yes, I'm that old when I looked 22 in this life.
We're 28, Wendy. We're 28 and we're sticking to it.
Anyway, so, you know, and I had 4 friends that kept in contact with me, and they're still the 4 that I've got. And a lot of your childhood friends, like I've known people like my entire life, and they're kind of the ones that I'm closest to. And you kind of, you know, when you can't go out and do things, it actually makes you kind of get a bit real about, okay, so where am I going to spend my time? Who's reaching out to me? Who's connected? Who's checked in to see if I'm all right? And that kind of tells you a little bit in terms of, you know, the merit of that. And a lot of sunshine friends have kind of,
Definitely.
And that comes back to your values as well. You know, so Stacey, you were talking about, you know, what really reestablishing or reconnecting with your values. And when we know what those are, they kind of guide the rest of our life, the people we have in our lives, the experiences we look for. And, you know, I think when we also follow our curiosity, that also helps us to reconnect with what is important, and therefore our values too. People, experiences, places, things.
Well, guys, I'm going to wrap that up, and we're going to all head back into the same room.
Okay,
Oh my God, this has been stressful.
The magic.
All right, let's hope this works and we're not all cut off.
Hello? Anna? Oh my gosh. What did I miss? Now Kate's on mute. No?
Yes, Kate's muted.
Okay, good. I was just like, hang on, let me start my video. She's like probably confused.
Okay, I'm back.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Good
Oh
to
my
see
gosh,
you, Anna.
don't stress, Anna.
I've never had any issues until today. It's weird.
I mean, I'm having technical issues right now, so no.
Oh, hey.
All right, so is it
Everyone's having issues today.
Oh, we're good? Okay.
Hey, I was on mute though.
Okay, everybody's back. Wonderful. Whew. Okay. Breakout rooms. The scary part is over for Cate. Hi, Michael. How you doing? Back on speaker view. I have unmuted Michael. Okay, so we're good. So, guys, thank you so much. There was such beautiful, beautiful words that people shared. That was really wonderful. Thank you so much. I don't know, Michael. Did you have any particular takeaways that you wanted to share?
I was humbled to listen to people. We had a variety of stories. I think most people, and I've pointed it out, I think relatively we are in a fairly lucky society. So even when our life fall apart, most of us are not in a dire situation. Imtiaz was very kind to share with us that he has gone through some difficulties in last year and not able to go back to his home country and stuff like that. But just this sense of how we tend to assume that we have control of life. And that's because in the West, or in the developed world, so to speak, the system are good enough to support that illusion. Some of us have lived in in third world countries, and you know that like it's not assured that you're going to open the tap and water is going to come. You know, electricity is going to be there for the whole night, or in the worst cases that police is not going to barge into your home and beat you up because whatever, right? You said this the wrong thing, or they just felt like it, or whatnot. And so I think what happened in a situation like this in COVID-19 is that illusion again get ripped off. But we also kind of in a position where we can be appreciative of the fact that we do overall have a lot going for us. And I find that attitude of just remembering to sort of count my blessings, so to speak, even when I'm down and out, is generally, it's like a little good sidekick act for developing self-awareness. So self-awareness and gratefulness together really are a good recipe for us to sort of smile about life when we can. And even when we can't, when we go through a difficult patch, if we look at the bigger picture overall, we have relatively very good lives. So it's just nice to sort of get affirmation for that.
Definitely. Now I have a final question. Everybody please include your final questions if you have any in the chat, or I think there's a Q&A box. If there's not, just in the chat, that's totally fine as well. My last question to you, Michael, is how do you stay motivated, inspired, productive? You know, how are you adapting to embrace emerging opportunities? And what is your top tip to adapt?
I would say two things. The first is that if you can get into the habit of trying to catch yourself when you're on automatic pilot, and it sounds like a bit odd, because while you're on automatic pilot, you kind of don't remember to remember. But what you find is that if you put the intention in the same way that I've mentioned before, like for example, if I'll mention, look, I think you're going to see a red car tonight driving home, you're probably going to notice one. So by that sort of apparatus, that sort of mechanism in the head, if you start to look for the opportunities to remember, you'll suddenly go, oh, I've just done that. I've just sort of caught myself thinking a thought that doesn't serve me. And understand that your habitual patterns of thinking, it just happens to be what you've developed into. There's no reason in the world why you should subscribe to that thinking if you realize that it doesn't serve you, because as it happens, you're only one thought away from feeling empowered. You're only one thought away from feeling like, you know what, I can handle it. You just have to sort of splice that thinking inside, right? So developing that self-reflective sort of process, some people call it the observer or the inner witness, your ability to sort of witness yourself as you're thinking, is really useful by way of practice. And sometimes it's just, use triggers, like for example, put something on your mirror. So when you come in the morning, and if you notice, we tend to sort of brush our teeth, but we're in complete automatic pilot because we just think about the day or whatever. Put a little sign saying brush with awareness, and then suddenly you're there and you might do it. And you might do it for 5-10 seconds and then fall into a thought. One way to think about it is like, it's a good analogy. Michael Neal, who's a fabulous coach, used this analogy of a train of thoughts. It's almost like you're sitting there and you're watching this train of thoughts going, and you decide whether you want to put yourself on that particular carriage. You don't do it consciously, but you can become conscious. It's like, oh, I don't actually want to spend time in that carriage. That doesn't serve me. So developing this capacity is really useful. The second thing, and I know this sounds sort of odd in a sense, because when we talk about presence, all these ideas of plans and structures are in some way not relevant. But on the flip side of it, we do need some structures. We do need some organized sort of intention for us to be able to develop. Simply because the way that our mind work, and you can, once you talk about mindfulness coaching, you can go into, how you make decisions from the present moment, and how you sort of fall into or practice this ability to just rise up to what happened and make that decision. But prior to that, I would highly recommend that if you need to create time in your life to reflect, you create that as a structure. Whether you want to sit on the cushion, whether you want to listen to a tape, whether you want to listen to some music and be aware of it. I find children are wonderful because they are present by essence, at least when they're young. So find handles or structures in your life that helps you to fall into that, and if you do that 5, 6, 8 times a day, you'll see a difference. Within few weeks, you'll start to see a difference. I highly recommend that.
So just picking opportunities to become aware. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Create some sort of a matrix in your life, or a framework by which you have triggers to make you aware. There's a beautiful little app. I think it's called the Mindfulness Bell. You can put it on your phone,
Okay.
and you can program it to actually just chime once an hour on a random time. And the easier thing to do, you see, every time you take a breath and you're conscious of your breath, that's it. You're present. You're aware, right? And so if you develop a practice by every time you hear that particular bell, you just take a deep breath with awareness. That's a really good way to develop it. And what you're looking for, because this is how tricky the mind is, you're looking for the place where it happens and you're feeling great, and it comes up and I'm breathing out, I'm cool, I'm being present and all that. And then you're in the middle of something and the chime will come up and you'll catch yourself, oh, okay, I don't have to do it now. Right? You'll just really kind of like, and you look for that, and you want to catch yourself, because if you do it too many times, you just start to ignore it. And that's what we do, right? So you want to look for those opportunities to see yourself where you diminish or you shrink yourself from your ability to be present by doing that sort of stuff.
Definitely. I think Anna asked, and I think it's a perfect question to end on, any last pearls of wisdom?
Yes, I definitely say, look, I can sit here and talk about my experience and my learning of self-reflection and whatnot, and great, maybe I'm able to share some wisdom, right? The truth is that like that wisdom is inside you, right? And I know I'm sounding like sort of like a new age sort of a typical new age sort of speaker, but the point is, that self-awareness is inside you. There's nothing that is not there already. It's just kind of covered. Another analogy that sometimes you hear about is that like we are diamond and we cover with horse shit. And what we try to do is, when we cover it with horse shit, is we try to put lacquer on the horse shit to pretend that we're not looking like horse shit, right? And we spend a lot of time, a lot of self-development is actually, how am I going to put more lacquer on the horse shit so it doesn't feel or look like a horse shit? And what I'm trying to point out is that regardless of what you feel or think about yourself, you're always a diamond already. So instead of sort of like looking for more lacquers to sort of cover the whole seat, just spend some time digging a little bit by being present, by looking for places to be aware of yourself, and you'll find the diamond inside already. Beautiful. I hope it helps.
I loved it. I thought that was great. Great analogy to end the session. Just quickly, everybody, if you haven't already, pop your LinkedIn details in the chat box, and I will make sure that we can connect after this. Michael, where can we find you?
I'll send you my LinkedIn address, so you can add it to the list. Yeah. Also, if you want to send me a message, you just look for Happy Habits. So I work with a model called Positive Neuroplasticity, and originally my website was positiveneuroplasticity.com.au. Yeah. And then I realized that no one knows what does that mean, so I was trying to find another name, and I think Happy Habits is basically positive neuroplasticity. So if you got,
oh yeah, is it www.happyhabits?
Yeah, happyhabits.com.au.
Perfect.
And you can connect with, there's a way to connect with me through that website, or just look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me. And I just want to share, I thrive in engaging with people on sort of meaningful ways that make, sort of help and support them to grow. So if you have any questions or you want to sort of knuckle something out, don't hesitate to reach out. I love it.
Beautiful. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Michael, thank you so much for coming in. That was an incredible session. I feel so much lighter after that. I will.
Thank you, Wendy, for organizing it.
Oh, my pleasure, Michael. It's always.
Just in case you missed it, my name is Cate. I am the event coordinator here at Victory Offices. I know that at the moment everybody's kind of working from home, but they're slowly trickling back into the office. So if you are looking for a flexible place to work, keep us in mind. We do have a couple of really good deals going on at the moment, which I know that like straight off the bat, we're doing 2 weeks free on pretty much any service, whether that's in person or virtual. And you can get in contact with me specifically. Otherwise, head on straight to our website. Otherwise, I look forward to being in contact, hopefully another event soon or via LinkedIn. All right, everybody, have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.